The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for today's micro webinar on lead nurturing tactics. Our goal for today's micro webinar is to discuss some lead nurturing tactics, surprise, for email campaigns and beyond that. So today we're sharing our best practices, giving you ideas for more effective emails and messaging for your campaigns. And what we're going to do is start by running through some email management concepts, and we're going to finish up with 3 quick tips for overall lead nurturing success. So just real quick, I'd like to begin with some introductions. My name is Deneen. I'm the Marketing Manager at Technology Advisors. For those of you who do not know us, we are a business consulting company, a business software consulting company. We help businesses select and implement products like CRM, marketing automation, CPQ, BI tools, etc. And then specific to CRM, we also offer training support, software customization. With us today is Channel Account Manager at Acton Marketing, Brenda Ronson. Acton is a great marketing automation solution. Many of our customers have benefited from it, and I think a lot of that success has to do with how invested Acton is in educating the market through events just like this. Brenda's been kind enough to lend her expertise for several of our recent webinars, and we're very happy to have her with us today. One quick housekeeping item before we begin. This micro webinar will be recorded, and that recording, as well as all the links that we mentioned in the micro webinar, will be shared with you via email after the event for your convenience. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, feel free to type them in that questions box, and we'll do our best to get those answered for you. So with that, I give the floor over to Brenda.
Thanks so much, Deneen, and thank you guys for taking time out of your busy schedule to learn some new ideas and some ideas specifically to help with drip nurture, lead nurturing. I always like to start with just a review of what we've covered in our previous micro webinars, and that is just why it's so important. You know, 50% of leads are qualified but not ready to buy according to Gleanster. And we really want to nurture these leads over time, you know, educating and assisting them during their decision process. I call it the trust component because this isn't really hard sell. This is all about consideration, especially if you have a complex product or service that you're offering customers. And it's really educational. So Lead Nurture is basically this automated email program that encourages the prospective buyer to interact with your brand and to have your brand be top of mind when they are ready to buy. So if you have permission and really good segmented and demographic data and you want to proceed with engagement, this webinar is really about some of those innovative techniques that we can use to capture their interest further and again keep your brand top of mind when they are ready to buy. And so, you know, one of the things when we talk about email is why do we want to put these whizzy ideas into our email? Well, it's primarily because today most buyers have a lot of email clutter. You're not even competing with your competitors for mind share. You're competing with, you know, a buyer's child's homework and a teacher correspondence, or, you know, a new offer from Macy's. And so it's all about separating what you can do for them from a business perspective. And then also it earns points with, you know, some more tech-savvy buyers that really want that engagement. And quite honestly, higher conversion numbers. People, when they are ready to buy, that can attribute that brand interaction that they had with a business need. And so we're going to talk about some of these techniques, making marketing the science beyond the art, including animated GIFs. We're going to talk a little bit about HTML5, relatively new tool called Scratch It, some of the psychology of why these techniques works, and we're going to wrap with some quick email tips for marketers that will help you execute these programs extremely well. So we'll kick off just talking a little bit about animated GIF. One of the things we like to say at Acton, and I know Technology Advisors has used this as well, is you want to say a lot without saying anything at all. A little bit of movement helps to showcase your brand. I think we all know that a picture can be worth 1,000 words. In this case, the company Litmus is debuting a new product, and it's much easier with a picture to kind of capture the highlights, so it's very visual and powerful. And it allows a prospect to quickly understand something without having to read volumes of text. So in this case, and mine is not moving, I apologize for that, but it's incredibly simple. Just a couple frames of movement, like a looping video, really showcases a product or a service without that text. But you know, there's always some gotchas in these types of tool sets, and so we wanted to make sure that we outlined that animated GIFs really have some challenges in certain email clients. So just be careful in certain email clients where only the first image would shown. It would not do the replication, and that's just a compatibility issue. But we always also say too, when you're trying out this type of techniques, be very careful about your file size. These can be very massive GIF files. The goal is subtlety, not annoying. So if you limit the number of frames, reduce the resolution or the colors, compress the file as much as possible, it's much more likely to be consumed. The other thing is to always make sure that it's supporting your story but not overwhelming your story. So again, very subtle images that makes your brand come to life. One of the things is we've attached a few links of some GIF making tools out there in the marketplace, and don't worry, Deneen is going to follow up post this event with some of these links, so don't worry about jotting them down. But here's a few types of animated GIFs that you can try out for your business, and again, many of these are free tools. Trial and error on a certain segment, just trying it out for a select demographic in your database is always a good place to start. The second kind of technique that we're excited about today is HTML5 video. It's really a wow factor. If you put HTML5 embedded video in your email, it's certainly an emerging area for marketers. The subscriber can play the video right in their mail, and they don't have to transfer to a landing page, and you don't have the risk that you're going to lose them as they move over. In this example, the Times was showcasing an advantage of their new digital app, and as you can see, the video is embedded directly into the mail, and so again, we don't risk losing your audience because they're consuming their mail on their mobile device, for example, and don't want to move over to a landing page. And the gotchas really with HTML5 is there are a few email clients that it's not going to render as correctly. For example, Gmail, it's just not as robust as it is in Apple Mail or Outlook, but again, this is trial and error, and certainly if your database is supporting these other mail clients, HTML5 is a great tool set to use. We also, just from a pro tip arena, it's always good to have some type of fallback image. Utilize your web developer to get the image exactly right. There's some free tutorials here from Acid and Litmus to help you get it right. And again, Deneen will send these out, so don't worry about copying down the bit.ly to get more material. Certainly, again, a very powerful wow factor in your email marketing. One arena that you might not have heard about that we're excited about is Scratch It. It's essentially a virtual lottery scratch ticket. The consumer of the email is going to click through to a landing page with a mouse tool and scratch and reveal an offer. And that's kind of exciting because the conversion on these types of scratch lottery-based emails is very high. It can improve engagement by up to 10 times. We've certainly used this technology at Acton, and we've had similar results. So you might be asking yourself, well, why does this work? I mean, are people really that intrigued? Well, of course, there's some psychology that's at work, right? Most buyers, of course, are driven by human nature. They want to feel special and appreciated, and that's really the first element of engagement. Yeah, we talked about our goal with lead nurture is to leave this brand impression for when they will buy. So the idea is to be very educational, but also fun. It's not necessary to hard sell when they're still evaluating, and we're trying to leave that brand impression. So another key with a tool like Scratch It is, let's not overdo this. There's a time and a place for this type of technique. So for example, try to limit it to a special offer and make sure it's very logical that you've put some thought into it, and don't repeat using Scratch It on every single email campaign. So think for example, about a discount or some type of loyalty program where it can be very, very effective. You can check out Scratch It at the website noted below, and then again will be in the summary that Deneen sends out. The other thing we wanted to just spend a little bit of time on is, what is our goal with this responsive revision? As we talked about earlier, we really need to think about multi-channel flexibility. We want to capture, response and engagement on any channel, but also any form. So as we know, people are very busy today, and they might be carrying their phone and checking their email. They're not always at their desktop. They might have their tablet along. So it's really critical when you think about your email that it's thumb-friendly, icons and buttons make sense, vertical scroll, that it renders correctly, and keep in mind that these responsive revisions are how we want to build, right? Start kind of with mobile mindset first and work backwards, because a lot of channels today are being dominated by mobile, but especially email is where we're seeing that mobile has been a case. Deneen, I just want to call on you too. I mean, what has Technology Advisors' experience been in designing for a mobile buyer today?
Well, actually, and Brenda and I were talking about this the other day. We had recently updated our website this year, and we found a template we liked. We definitely knew we wanted to do the vertical scroll, because that's just as Brenda was saying, the big thing right now. People are spending more time on their mobile phones. We recognize that. So we chose a template that said that it was adaptable for mobile. It had the vertical scroll feature, really nice options, and we got about a week to 2 weeks into designing it. We got some content in there, and then we said, all right, let's take a look at how this is rendering on mobile. And when we actually looked at the mobile preview of it, it was awful. So, I mean, luckily we caught it early enough that we just scrapped it, and we went and we found one that we searched for, and before we didn't make that mistake again. Before we purchased it, we went and looked, okay, how is this looking on mobile right now? Let's not wait until we have it partially designed out to look at that. And we picked a template that I think was far superior, and it loads really quick, it renders really well, and I just think that's so powerful in terms of letting our audience be able to get to that information and have it still be so organized for them, because a lot of times we do link to our website, through our emails. So if they're looking at our email on their mobile phone, sure, our email will look great on their mobile phone, but when they go to the website, what's that going to look like? So, you know, that's just something that we're constantly keeping in mind going forward.
Thanks, Deneen. I think I work with so many of our great partners like technology advisors, and it's great to have, you know, a real practitioner's experience here. Certainly, you know, the statistics in the Marcom world support what you just said, because the results are definitely stronger when we look at creating first that mobile experience and making sure that it renders correctly in that environment, because it nearly doubles the engagement. And there's also a much higher percentage of the ability to pass those as sales-ready leads. So it's always exciting for us when we look at those types of results, and certainly something we should bear in mind when we're designing our campaign. So I'm going to turn the mic over to Deneen as well to really talk about additional just quick tips in terms of email guidelines and steps as you create an email nurture and lead program. Deneen?
Thank you, Brenda. All right, so we're going to spend the last 10 to 12 minutes here just going over these quick tips, and then, of course, any questions that you have. So just a quick overview of what those are going to be. We're going to talk about the 3 email guideline, looking for 20% conversion, and then beyond the inbox. So number 1, 3 email guideline. Essentially, the long and short of this is don't overcomplicate or string out your email nurturing campaigns. 10 or 11 emails could potentially frustrate your prospects, so you want to keep it to the point. You know, they say that the ideal text length is between 50 and 175 words for an email, and that you want to just be as succinct and direct as possible. So that makes it works. Really benefits both of you because it makes the work more manageable for you, and your prospects appreciate not being bombarded. They know when they open an email from you that it's going to be something of value to them as opposed to just getting slammed with those emails every single day. An example that I usually come back to on this is at my old job, I worked at a publishing company, and we published a bunch of B2B magazines. And so I would always send out the marketing emails for each of our magazine's audiences. And there was one publisher in particular, he was just bent on having to send out an email to his audience every single day, a newsletter that he would put together with like 30 links in it. And he was seeing the lowest open rates out of any of our publishers. And so he, you know, called me into his office one day and said, you know, what do you think we can do about this? I feel like, you know, I don't know why we're not getting these open rates, and, you know, what are your suggestions? And I told him, you know, to be honest with you, I think you're sending too much. Yeah, there's a lot of helpful information that you can be sending, but you can be sending that once a week or once every 2 weeks. And when they see that come into their inbox, knowing that that's going to be a valuable piece of information for them, they're more likely to open it then, as opposed to when they're seeing it every day. I always bounce back to, okay, me as a consumer, I'm going to put myself in your shoes. I'm going through my emails every single day, and sometimes I just don't have time, and I see it come in, I skip it. But if it's an email address that I don't often see, and I have a history with that particular company of knowing that the emails that they send me are rarer, and when they do, they're of value, I'm more likely to open it. So you don't want to become white noise in the inbox is basically what I'm saying. If someone sees you sending things that they find valuable, they're going to open it the next time that they see an email. So the 3 email guideline is flexible for, you know, you might need to send 1 or 2 more than that. Depending on the type of campaign you're running, depending on your audience. So that's something that you balance out with how you know your audience to be and the types of results you're seeing. But the general point of this tip is just quality is not quantity, is the point. Okay, so then our next tip is 20% conversion. So 20 to 30% of each of your top, middle, and bottom of the funnel prospects should be converting into sales qualified leads each month. If they're not, you want to go back and reassess your strategy. So are you sending each funnel stage the right content? That's a big question. Sometimes that's the main issue that you have to tackle. So on the next slide, we're going to give you an idea of the kind of content that you should be targeting for each segment of your funnel. So here's our funnel. At the top, we have our new leads. And those are the leads that we most want to start in with building that trust through educational content. One of the things I personally am working on this year is creating buyer's checklists. You know, we're resellers of software, but prior to this job, as I mentioned, I was in the publishing industry. I didn't know very much about how to go about buying software, and I assume that the average person maybe doesn't know that either. So if you could provide documents like that that are going to be helpful to that person and aren't hard selling, like Brenda was saying, it's not about hard selling. It's about establishing yourself as a valuable asset and as somebody who wants to help. And so especially at the top of that funnel, that's what you want to be starting with. Any sort of information that could help them on their buying journey. And then when you get down to that middle of the funnel, you're looking at your marketing qualified leads and your sales qualified leads. This is the point in your campaign where you can start to address the pain points and how your products and services solve those pain points. Now you can kind of bring in more specific examples that, you know, showcase your product a little bit, still not wanting to get too pushy with it, but, you know, you're bringing in things, you're showing them that you know about their market, you know what they deal with, and you're here to help them. And then at the bottom of the funnel, you have your opportunities. That's when you want to look at sales enablement and relationship management. So you're throughout the whole funnel, really, you're still doing that relationship management, but at the top there is when you're creating that core of the relationship, and then it's kind of dripping down throughout. Okay, and then the last thing we're going to talk about is just going beyond the inbox, which I'm sure you guys as savvy marketers are very aware. You've heard the phrase omnichannel before. Omnichannel, you got to hit people in different areas. Its email nurturing campaigns have a lot of strengths, but it's a multi-channel approach that's truly going to tie it all together. So marketing automation platforms like Acton, they offer these email metrics which are amazing and super helpful, but they also help you with social media outreach and dynamic website content. So that allows you to combine your email marketing with your social, get ideas for your paid retargeting ads, do some dynamic content, and then also incorporate direct outreach, and that way you can really maximize that influence.
Well, that's a great tie-in, Janine, to our next micro-webinar coming up on March 3rd about hyper-targeting. I can't talk, obviously, with my cold. Hyper-targeting and dynamic content. So we'd just like to open it up to some questions from the audience, and then we'll wrap up.
Okay, I have a question here. I don't have a lot of educational content to work with. Can I still run a nurture campaign like this?
Definitely. I think you brought this up earlier, Janine, about the importance of creating a buyer checklist. So you really can use it as a reference, those personas and what their needs are. It really is kind of key to have sales and marketing aligned. It won't take too much time. It's that ongoing collaboration. You know what your customers have bought from in the past, right? So this can be a very valuable piece of content for your leads they're clearly in the market for something and they don't know where to start. Like you said, you know, coming from a different industry, you want them to engage and ask deeper questions once they're known to you and you start that engagement process. Because starting the engagement process is really building trust with you. So if you're really tight on time, you can share it on your, you know, relevant articles from your website, but always with a twist. There's a free tool called Sniply that you can use to overlay a link to your own web page or a piece of content in another site. So even if you're sharing something from someone else's website, you still have the opportunity to get that lead to come back to your content. It's great for social media posts because it shows me how many people are clicking on my link in that page, and it floats in the corner of your screen with your company logo and a call to action. And it's just one note on that, it's not all websites support that. I just read an article, for example, that Deneen had posted about from CIO magazine about the need for more and more marketers to be technologists, and the Sniply site was overlaying the article. So it was fantastic.
Aha, well good, I'm glad. I'm glad someone's clicking those because yeah, I love that. This is my new favorite thing, and you guys were the ones who showed us that. And ever since we started talking about using that tool, I'm just obsessed with it. I use it almost every day on my social media posts.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Links everybody back.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then we have another question here. How do you get started if you don't have a marketing automation solution?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. Really two ways. Contact technology advisors. You know, Acton's partners have real-world experience consulting and kind of giving an assessment on what you want in terms of outcomes or results. And then, of course, there's a complete library of marketing material at Acton's website. And Deneen, again, will send some of these links to acton.com and our resource page. Really a rich library there of the latest thinking for marketers on, you know, issues and what matters most to them and business.
And so then, you know, just as a follow-up, if you need help, my information via the follow-up email I'll be sending to this, you can always just simply reply to my email and it will come to my inbox. But you are welcome to contact Brenda or myself with any questions or any help that you need. We're happy to be there for you. So we just want to thank everyone.
Yeah, I was going to say thanks again, Deneen. Appreciate the opportunity, and thanks to all of you for taking time out of your busy schedules.
Thank you, Brenda. Have a great afternoon, everybody.